forward. So now we're taking aspects from the acoustical design and finding other opportunities that even enhance the development even further.
Why don't you do that? It's the right thing to do.
Yes, at the meeting the other day, there was someone who had a sign saying, "We're in favor of fun." I mean, I'm in favor of fun, everyone's in favor of fun, but I don't exactly think it's fun when you take a commercial entertainment zone the size of the Allstate Arena and you plop it down in the middle of somebody's residential neighborhood. That is not fun for the people living around it, who are going to be subjected to the environmental impact, first of all, of destroying the stadium, but then of having this very large concert venue that, according to Northwestern's plan, is going to host major live events with not just the sound from the events themselves, but from sound checks and equipment trucks coming in. And this is not something that fits into this kind of a neighborhood. This is your basic middle-class residential neighborhood. So that's one of the big objections. But I think the other thing is the cynicism that Northwestern has employed in terms of pitting one neighborhood against another and claiming that this is entitled rich white people against the interests of African Americans. And I find it really funny that Northwestern has just now discovered African American interests in Evanston. You know, where were they in terms of building intergenerational wealth when my dad graduated in 1959 and was not allowed to live in Northwestern dormitories because he was African American? You know, where was their concern with intergenerational black wealth when they were complicit in segregation and redlining in Evanston, which lost untold amounts of African American wealth here in Evanston? Where were they? Where was their concern with intergenerational wealth when they started a skilled trades program and then canceled it after 3 years? So, excuse me if I'm a little bit skeptical at their idea that the main reason that they're doing this project is so that they can create more black intergenerational wealth. This just seems like pure and naked exploitation of the black community, and as I said, pitting neighborhood against neighborhood, when really it's quite suspect how much of a benefit this is going to have for most people in Evanston. We're concerned about traffic and access to the hospital. People have to get up and down Central, which, you know, as we can see right now, is a heavily traveled street, even now at 3:30 on a Wednesday afternoon. And we already know that on game days, the traffic access is very difficult. But if you're bringing in more and more concerts with people not just coming from the community, which is what often happens with concerts, but people coming from all over the area who aren't that aware of the area, trying to drive in and out of here. At their presentation Wednesday night, the parking and traffic experts said that they were going to be bringing in shuttle buses, and our city council member Eleanor Ravel pointed out that they would need 138 shuttle buses to get the amount of patrons that they're expecting for these concerts in and out of our neighborhood. 138 shuttle buses. And their response was, well, we'll have double rows of shuttle buses, as though that was going to solve the problem. So this is just a very poorly conceived project. It is, again, exploiting African Americans. There's this claim that they're going to be creating all sorts of wonderful jobs for African Americans, that they are targeting 35% minority and women business owners, which could simply mean that they're mostly hiring white companies that have 1 or 2 women in leadership positions. It doesn't necessarily mean they're hiring African Americans. It doesn't say anything about hiring local people. And so where's the accountability? Where is the proof that they're going to follow through on these really vague promises? And what is truly in it for Evanston as opposed to the wealthy backers of this program, like our former mayor, Steve Hagerty, who is a major backer and who is a consultant for Northwestern. Our council member, Eleanor Ravel, I think is trying to be diplomatic and trying to be fair-minded about this, and she is in kind of a tough position, honestly. What she did initially, there were people in the community who asked if they could prepare rebuttals to the statements. But of course, as you said, we didn't get to see the information they were going to present ahead of time, which makes it very difficult to do rebuttals. So she asked people in the community to submit questions, and there are many very well-informed people in our community who submitted very specific questions about the environmental impact, about the traffic, about the noise, and the other issues that we have. And she did, I think, hold their feet to the fire pretty well in terms of pushing back on some of their claims, which were rather extravagant. But nonetheless, this is typical of the way Northwestern has handled these meetings, is that they get to give these presentations and they're not really giving the community an adequate opportunity to respond in an informed way.
I think the thing that we're trying to emphasize is that there is absolutely no reason to give Northwestern something in exchange for nothing, especially when that something is costing our city in various types of ways, whether it's draining our resources or heavily inconveniencing and pushing out residents in the area. I think that sometimes Northwestern paints us as unwilling to compromise, and that's completely not the case. There are many things that we think are on the table, but we just expect that they pay their part, and they're trying to give us nothing and paint it as if it's something. And so, you know, like, they want to rebuild the stadium, we're like, fine, we're like open to that. But every other stadium that has rebuilt itself and has done a 2 to 3 year construction program has given something back to the community in exchange. And to offer jobs, honestly, is like quite literally the least you can do, because you need to have those jobs filled in order to rebuild it. So they're not giving anything, they're not making any type of concession. So I've talked to quite a few people who work for Northwestern, and they are essentially like, I don't want to compare them to like anyone too nefarious, but kind of, they're stonewalling us. They're basically like, they're purposely not engaging in order to get what they want, kind of akin to a child holding a temper tantrum. We've asked for many times for them to come to the table. Obviously they do things like skip out on meetings and just don't respond to emails, and this is kind of their tactic. Why? I think it's because they're really counting on their manipulation of the public, a combination of them pretending as though this is a huge boon to the Black community, which I have to heavily emphasize, and I don't really care if it's super controversial. I really think that this is an example of people using liberal white tears to their advantage and trying to, capitalize on the fact that the people in Evanston are very race conscious, and instead of like using that to benefit Black people, it's actually being used to harm a wider community and give no benefits at all, like tangible or sincere benefits to the Black community. We're completely not against the stadium being rebuilt. I do still like heavily stand on the fact that there is something there to allow Northwestern to build the stadium is not a given. They shouldn't feel like they're entitled to that, because if you look at the stadium, it is perfectly fine. It is not crumbling. It isn't as if like it needs to be rebuilt. So what they're doing is essentially a vanity project for a billionaire, and they're going to inconvenience people and harm the environment. Like, there are always talks when you build something remove something that's perfectly fine and rebuild something else. And so like, for sure, if they came to the table and they said, oh, well, we're willing to do this actual initiative that will impact the community, and in particular, if I'm being honest, I would prefer for it to be the Black community. If they want to donate to the Evanston Reparations Fund, and it were even like 0.1% of what they plan to spend on the stadium. And let me point out that if they even spent 1% of what they were planning to spend on the stadium and gave it to the Evanston Reparations Fund, it would be $3 million. And that's not saying it's a lot, it's not saying it's a little, but if they wanted to give even a drop in the bucket to the Evanston Reparations Fund and then do that, and then they said, could we do that in exchange for building the stadium? Personally, that'd be where I stopped at. I don't think that's the only option. I think they have other things that I'd be open to. But I think it's disingenuous to come in and disrupt the community and then pretend that just by virtue of you doing something that you're going to stimulate an economy with short-term jobs that will only last 2 years. And also to add, I have no idea why anyone thinks this will create any new jobs after 2 years. It's still going to be the same stadium. They're going to be hosting the same events for the most part. So what could they possibly be adding, with the exception of like 3 more people to work the concession stand? And I'm gonna tell you right now, that's not Black wealth. Like, working what I presume to be a minimum or slightly above minimum wage job, giving out drinks or whatever, it's not really helping anyone in this area. So to make it short though, like, we're definitely open to the stadium being rebuilt. We're okay with it, but we think that this Northwestern pretends as if they get more out of being, as if we as a city get more from them being here than the vice versa. But it is a symbiotic relationship. They get just as much as we do from being here, and we only get that benefit if we force them to the table, because they are clearly a more sophisticated organization than the Evanston City Council is.
A few years ago, Northwestern opened an office in ETHS that was supposed to make it easier for Evanston residents to attend Northwestern, but as far as I can tell, that has not significantly increased the number of African American students attending Northwestern. Now, they would say that they do outreach activities and things like STEM workshops and other workshops that are supposed to, contribute to the academic benefits of being at ETHS. But it's all these little piecemeal donations and activities. And one of the things that we're suggesting, if we had a community benefits agreement, was that Northwestern could give an annual contribution to the school systems, to District 65, to District 202, and let the elected representatives of our school boards make the decisions on how that money would best be used and how that could best benefit all students in Evanston. And that, I think, would actually mean that there would be more students who would be eligible to apply to Northwestern and to other good schools, because there are other good universities around here besides Northwestern.
Okay, so as it applies to the tax issue, on the offset, what a dangerous precedent it is to set to allow an organization that's trying to engage in for-profit business operate as a nonprofit. Like, that is a danger to everyone. I told someone in a comment on the roundtable, like, what's next? Are they gonna start using the dorms as hotel rooms and we're supposed to just be okay with that? And I think that that's like where I ideologically draw the line right there. But in addition to that, like, universities aren't what they used to be, and I think about that all the time. Every time I see legislation getting passed about people who are in so much student loan debt that they can't afford houses or can't afford to start families. So these are no longer the benevolent corporations that used to be able to work your way through and support yourself. These are multi-billion dollar companies, corporations that are manipulating the system, manipulating the government, and manipulating small politics, whether it's investing in city council elections and donating to campaigns that they have no business being in, or anything else. And so, like, when we talk about, like, should we be worried about them paying taxes, this is if they were a business, it'd be a very, very successful business, and one of the most highest grossest incoming businesses in the city. And so when we think about that and them avoiding paying taxes, it doesn't make sense. For sure, maybe we can argue that nonprofits should pay less taxes because supposedly education is or could be a benevolent pursuit. But as we're standing right now, and I hear kids telling me that they're taking out $70,000 in loans to afford cost of attendance at Northwestern, that's not charity. That's not charity anymore. This is a business that is taking money from young people and then at the same time trying to talk back to the community and pretend as if they don't have anything.
Right.
And I'm not buying it personally.
And I would also say Northwestern likes to compare itself to many other highly selective universities like the Ivy League universities. And all of the Ivy League universities are now committed to making voluntary annual contributions to their home communities. And, as Parielle was saying, that's not really charity. I mean, for one thing, although Northwestern likes to talk about everything it gives to the university, a lot of those things that it gives are really payments for services. So it would be as though we were able to say that we were donating so much to the community because we're paying our taxes. That's an obligation that they have. And they give these little one-off penty-ante sort of donations to the schools or to the park district, but that's not the same as making an annual donation that is seriously going to affect the operating budget of, say, District 65 or 202. That's not enough to, say, hire more teachers or to build a new science lab. For that, you need ongoing revenue that you can count on, and that, again, as I said, our elected officials have control over. So if they want to be like Harvard, if they want to be like Yale, if they want to be like Cornell, they should act like those schools and live up to their obligation and make an ongoing financial contribution directly to the citizens of Evanston, directly to our city budget and to our school district budgets. And this is also something that benefits them. Part of the reason that our coalition has the Northwestern University graduate workers as part of the coalition is because they live in Evanston. Many of them are married and have kids. They want their families to have decent schools, decent parks. They want their communities to be safe. Northwestern spends $11 million on policing, on the college policing. What if they spent all of that money on actually strengthening the community by making those donations that would enable people to lead stronger and more secure and healthy lives, and which would result in a reduction in crime? But instead, they spend it on policing. They're spending these millions and millions on a stadium that is really only going to help a fairly small number of people in our community, and yet they won't contribute in some kind of long-standing, sustainable way, in the way that all the other Ivy League schools are committing to their universities. And those schools, my daughter went to Yale. Yale used to make the exact same excuses and justifications that Northwestern does about how they contribute in other ways, and that New Haven is New Haven and benefits so much just from the presence of Yale there. But after years of a sustained campaign from students and local residents, including a lot of African American residents, they have recently decided that they are going to contribute $135 million over a period of 5 years directly to the city of New Haven. And I think Northwestern should follow their lead. It really bugged me that at the meeting there was one of our local residents who claimed that the Black community is in support of the stadium project. I mean, first of all, there's no one Black community. You know, we're not a monolith, we're all individuals. But I think that there are many of us, like Parielle and me, that are really turned off by the way Northwestern is trying to present this as though it's just a black-white issue, as though it's just the Black residents who are being terrorized and who are being taken advantage of by the white residents. I mean, if you want to look at white privilege, Pat Ryan is someone who really expresses white privilege. Steve Hagerty is someone who really expresses white privilege. When you have the privilege to have your daughter-in-law and your employees make $6,000 contributions to a local city council race to keep one Black woman out of office because she opposes your project, that is white privilege writ large. So, you know, I really do not like this tone that they're trying to spread, that it's a competition between Black people and white people. I think it is a disagreement between people who have the larger interests of everyone in Evanston at heart and those who just have their own personal financial interests at heart. We have heard that they have met with people like the NAACP or Evanston Thrives, but these meetings are backroom table discussions. They're not something that's subject to the Open Meetings Act. They're not something that's foiable. And also these discussions and supposed contracts and agreements that they're making, are they enforceable? How do we know what's being decided and how do we know that it can be enforced? And so that's why we're asking for a community benefits agreement that can be negotiated with the people of Evanston, where the result of it will be open and where there is a legal enforcement mechanism. So if they claim that they are going to strive to hire Black people in Evanston, we have some sort of accountability yardstick where we can say, this is what you committed to and you're not doing it.
I also wanted to add that I actually think that this is a lot of grandstanding. So I think that they're pulling in Black leaders, so reaching out to the NAACP, but I actually don't think that regular Black people care. And it's because this has very little impact. If you live in Evanston, rent is expensive. You already have a job. You have already figured that out. You're not waiting for a job that's gonna come a year or two from now. So those aren't the people that they're targeting, and the regular people do not care. They hear about the stadium, that they know that they received some type of mailer with a bunch of Black faces on it, which is questionable because I have to wonder again, why are they reaching out specifically to Black people? You know, they say 35% Black and women owned, but I didn't see a bunch of women on those mailers in particular, and I thought that was very suspicious. But, you know, they say that they receive these things, they say that they think that on its face they don't mind the idea of a concert, but when they hear what we're talking about and we'll be expressing, they explain the issue, they're just like, actually, okay, no. A lot of people that I know, once they know the full details, they aren't on board. I think that it's quite possible that Northwestern reached out to these African American, Black groups, and gave their spiel, and Black people are nice. If we have no reason to say no, we just, you know, if someone comes to us and they present us with some good words, we're just like, okay, well, unless someone else tells us differently, we'll stand where we are. I doubt that if we were at the point that we were now and they still came back and reached out to these Black community members before, you know, the issue became public, before all this happened, that we'd have the same outcome this time around.
So I stand somewhere in the middle. I feel like everybody, has a good point as to why they're for or against it. My major concern is what is going to happen to my business and my clientele. They are saying that they want to create all of this energy and put all this time and money into generational Black and brown wealth. And so I'm a business that's already here on Central Street, and I may be harmed by this business coming here and doing the events and things that they're going to do. So I guess my main concern is Northwestern going to be amicable to my business and helping me with how they may harm my business in the future. So I guess I'd say I'm sort of middle of the road. So one of the major concerns I have is one of the concerns that I had, from just the football season in general. Parking is crazy on football game days, as well as the amount of people that are in this area. So if we take that and add some more events to it, it just creates more of an issue for me and my clients as far as where we're going to park, how they're going to get to us. This is something that we have to deal with only 6 times a year, 7 times a year. So we have that built into our business plan, and we've already adjusted to that. But to add 17, 18, 20 more events, especially on the weekends, could be a real cause for concern for us. Some of the things that I see as an entrepreneur that maybe I could capitalize on, perhaps outdoor space. I have prime locations, so perhaps there's a way I can team up with some other businesses in order to maybe, capitalize on the number of people that are going to be walking by. Those are just some of the things we're thinking about. We're still early in strategizing in how we can make this work to our advantage. Part of our disadvantage is that we're client facing and we're behind the chair. So it's kind of difficult for us to sort of pivot and rethink, like, how can we make this work? People who are on their way to a concert don't need their hair done already, right? Their hair is done because they're going to the concert. So what are some of the things that we could do in order to make ourselves, more marketable in this industry? And so I'm just not sure yet. Happily, I have been able to speak with 2 men from Northwestern, and we've had a meeting or two, but I have nothing in writing. We have some ideas. I have some things that I have asked for. They seem to think that they're reasonable requests, but nothing has happened yet. I have no promises, and I definitely have nothing in writing to me. I have not given them a deadline. We're sort of still in talks, meaning that we're still talking about what are the things that I would like, and they're thinking about how they could help with that. So one of my issues is parking. And so they're supposed to be figuring out what are some things that they could do to maybe ease my issues with parking. Also, as far as like maybe ways in which Kandi Hair Studio could think about being able to capitalize on all the people that will be walking by. We've maybe had some talks about what we could do about some permits for, using the sidewalk for different things. And also I'm, wondering, like, okay, so let's say this doesn't work out and my business is harmed and I have to move. Can somebody provide me with some assistance if I need to move? I mean, I'm happily here after 14 years, business is thriving, but if I have to pick up and go somewhere else because it's not going to be going well in the next couple of years, is there a way that they can help me? So these are the things that I'm asking for, but we don't have any solutions just yet.
Terrell and Val, Northwestern's president, says he plans to meet with the Board of Trustees and other university leaders to discuss a possible new punishment for head football coach Pat Fitzgerald. Now, all of these allegations come as neighbors not too far away discuss whether or not to build a new football stadium right here. It's a beautiful morning in Evanston, but a storm is brewing within Northwestern University as disturbing hazing allegations within the football program continue to emerge. Adam Rittenberg is a senior writer for ESPN who's talked to current and former players and the whistleblower who sparked a 6-month inquiry into the program.
There were other incidents, whether it was how many Gatorade shakes you could drink in 10 minutes. There were other naked incidents that happened in the locker room, according to this whistleblower.
Now Northwestern president Michael Schill says he may have made a mistake in handing down a 2-week suspension without pay for current head coach Pat Fitzgerald. He wrote in part, "In determining an appropriate penalty for the head coach, I focused too much on what the report concluded he didn't know and not enough on what he should have known." Rittenberg says the whistleblower spoke out to prevent the alleged behavior from reoccurring.
The person told me my objectives is for Pat Fitzgerald to no longer coach in this program, but I have larger objectives to prevent any of this from happening in the future to other players.
The hazing scandal comes as there's heated debate within the Evanston community about whether a new $800 million stadium should be built where the Wildcats currently play at Ryan Field. Jim Freburg is against the new build.
I think it's going to produce much more congestion. This really was never an area that was built for large concert activity.
Fran and Bill Paden live down the street from Ryan Field and say they are for the construction but are concerned with the allegations.
I was very sorry to hear them. I don't like to hear things like that. I don't know what the truth is yet.
It'll be more successful as a football stadium and also as a center for other kinds of activities. It'll be a big step forward.
Now, the Northwestern football team released a statement they say is from all the players. They are calling the allegations exaggerated and twisted, and added that they do not tolerate
from lawyers as well as a former student at Northwestern. And they tell us while this situation is trying to be handled by Northwestern right now, it's a little too late. Wednesday morning, lawyers representing former Northwestern University football players addressed lawsuits that were filed against the school and the former head coach, Patrick Fitzgerald. The first 2 cases stem from former players who say they dealt with sexualized hazing and physical abuse. Incidents their lawyers say former head coach Patrick Fitzgerald and Northwestern University will be held accountable for. Attorney Parker Steiner had this to say about the lawsuit.
This isn't just a matter of football players against their coach or against their program. These are students, these are young individuals, these are athletes that were subjected to abuse by an athletic program in a university. And we intend to hold everyone involved accountable.
Another case will be led by civil rights attorney Benjamin Crump. He's representing 12 former players who say they endured physical, emotional, and sexual abuse due to the hazing practices that were going on.
We were all victims, no matter what our role was at the time. But the culture was so strong that we felt we had to go with it to survive, to be respected, and to earn the trust within the football program.
It is apparent to us that it is a toxic culture that was rampant in the athletic department at Northwestern University.
Recently, Northwestern looked into the hazing accusations, which led to Patrick Fitzgerald's firing. We reached out to the school for their reaction to the lawsuits. However, they declined to comment. But Northwestern's president, Michael Schill, sent a letter to his staff announcing changes, saying, including the monitoring of the football locker room, anti-hazing training, and the establishment of an online reporting tool for complaints. These steps, while necessary and appropriate, are just a start. And while Patrick Fitzgerald isn't with the university, he's still named in multiple lawsuits. His lawyers deny his involvement, saying the complaint has no validity as to Coach Fitzgerald, and we will aggressively defend these allegations with facts and evidence. And lawyers representing some of the former players say they plan to add Northwestern's former athletic director to the list of those defendants that are going to be in this lawsuit. Of course, we're going to keep you updated as we receive more information on this. For now, we're downtown. I'm Glenn Marshall, WGN News.